video, we're going to look at the transformations of trigonometric functions. This video specifically is going to focus just on sine and cosine. Be sure to check out the video for tangent as that becomes available. But as this one, focusing on sine and cosine, there are four transformations that we look at in order to either state the transformations of the function, or maybe we're asked to graph sine and cosine, and we need to figure out what we need to do in order to graph those functions. So this video is going to be a very informational rather than any examples. If you don't have the information I'm about to give you, it's going to be very difficult for you to graph or to even state what the transformations are. So you'll notice that in this function down here, I've given you f of x equals a times sine of b times x minus c plus d. Now, this is our general formula. A, B, C, and D represent the transformations that we're going to look at. Sine and cosine can be interchanged because they do the exact same thing for either function. So I don't want you to be confused that I wrote sine, but it applies to both of them. A, B, C, and D apply to both sine and cosine. So we're going to jump just straight in here, and we're going to start talking about A. So A represents our amplitude. Amplitude is our vertical stretch or compression. What that means is if A is greater than 1, the waves of our function are going to be very tall. They're going to be a lot taller. It's going to be stretched. So you're going to get real tall waves and such with whatever the function looks like. If A is a fraction, if it's between 0 and 1, say like 1/3, 1/2, 2/3, whatever it may be, it's going to level out the waves and make them compressed. It's going to make them smaller. That's what amplitude does. Amplitude is that vertical stretch or compression, but A also, if A is negative, it will flip our graph over the x-axis. Okay, so if A is negative, our graph will flip over the x-axis. So again, A, whatever number is there, if it's greater than 1, it's a vertical stretch. If it's less than 1, a fraction, it's going to be a compression. If A is negative, it's going to flip our graph over the x-axis. Now, when I look at our next transformation, this is going to be B. Now, this can get a little confusing to people. B represents a value that is changing the period. So what I'm going to say here is that B changes the period. The value of B is not the period. Period is found by taking 2 pi over B or 360 over B, just depending upon if you're in radians or degrees. That's how we find the period. I take 2 pi or I take 360 and I put it over my B value. Now, the actual period, what does period do? Well, period is simply the distance it takes for our pattern to repeat. And what I mean by that is what's the distance from a max to a max or a minimum to a minimum. That is the period. So the period is how long it takes before that cyclical pattern repeats. Max to max, min to min, so forth. Also, if you ever need to find your B value, let's say maybe I give you a question and you are given the period, but you don't know what the B value is. Maybe you're writing the equation for the function. Well, B is going to be 2 pi over the period. or 360 over the period. Okay, so that is B. Let's look at C. C is going to represent our, depending on maybe your teacher or professor, they may use the word phase shift or horizontal shift. Simply, the value of C is going to shift our graph left or right. However, bear in mind, it is opposite to what you think. If I have a negative C, it's going to shift my graph right. If I have a plus C, we're going to shift left. Okay? So that's phase shift. We shift left or we shift right. Finally, our last transformation is D, which represents our vertical shift. Also, this referred to as our midline. This simply shifts us up if it's a positive D, or we shift down with a negative D. Okay? So these are our transformations that occur when we are dealing with sine or cosine. So hopefully you guys feel a little bit better about being able to look at a function and know what transformations are being applied to that periodic function. Check out the next video for how to state what the transformations are giving a periodic function. And then be sure to check out the video of how to graph these functions. So thanks for checking out the video. I really hope it helped. See you next time.